Sten, we're live.
And thank you again to Larry, the Liberty guy, not just for that intro, but for his pinch hitting last week while I was out in Idaho. And I'm going to tell you about that trip. It really gave me a revelation that I'm going to talk to you extensively about here in the pre-game show and my opening remarks. But thanks to Larry for pinch hitting last week. I hope if you haven't seen it yet, please go to rifreedom.org/live and look up the To This We've Come video that we did an encore performance of last week. We got another great response. This is an aria for freedom that was written in the 1940s and is so relevant today and was performed by a Rhode Island woman, Claire Stottmuller. Please watch it. Great interview with her. It's out there at rifreedom.org. Again, thanks to Dr. Boston for joining in with Larry last Thursday. And it's good to be back with you in the dugout. Today, going to get into some deep stuff. I had a revelation I'll tell you about while I was flying out to Idaho. And I guess the theme is, and I'm unabashedly, all right? You can throw whatever arrows you want at me or others in the leftist media can. Unabashedly, I'm going to talk about American privilege and American supremacy as the counter to this baloney about white privilege and white supremacy. And of course, that leads right into our first guest in about 20 minutes or so, Nicole Solas, the South Kingston mom, who bravely stood up to the South Kingston School Committee after they threatened to sue her for asking questions about school curriculum. You've seen her all over the news, locally, nationally, become an instant media celebrity. Still doing, she's going to be our guest today. Joining her will be Bill Jacobson, a lawyer, the founder of the Legal Insurrection website based right here in Rhode Island, that originally launched her story and that was noticed, and that's where it got noticed by the national press, Nicole's story. So they will join us in about 20 minutes or so. And then we'll conclude today's show. We're going to continue on this bogus critical race theory in our schools with Bob Caradillo from Westerly. He was on maybe 6 or 8 weeks ago talking about concerns he had about this curriculum in Westerly, and now he's got proof and evidence of what's going on there. So stay tuned for that. Tomorrow, 2 interesting topics we'll cover. Did you know West Warwick, it's back again, that they've scheduled a drag queen story hour, I believe at a local library, sponsored by the city. Parents are outraged. We're going to talk about that. And we're going to cover the Barrington flag controversy. It's not the Black Lives Matter flag anymore. Black Lives Matter. It's now the gay pride flag, the rainbow flag that's flying above the Veterans Memorial, and that many veterans believe are desecrating the American flag. Then Thursday, of course, we'll have Dr. Boston. We're working on another guest. You know, they just won't quit, the COVID fearmongers. So we'll talk about some of the latest fear-mongering theories to go along. All right. American privilege and American supremacy. I'm going to get to my cap in a second. Last week, I attended a business conference in Idaho, the resort in the city of Coeur d'Alene. We'll talk about that in a second. On the way out, you know, at 30,000 feet, I got a nice window seat, and I just watched the whole way out and really viewed the great spectacle, the grandeur of America. You know, the great cities we saw in the east on the way from Providence to Chicago, including Chicago, the Great Lakes as you arrived and departed Chicago, the great enormous Great Plains and the great farmlands of the Midwest that we flew over. So cool the way there's those squares and those circles of all the acreage out there. And of course, then the great mountain ranges of the Mountain West as we flew in. And our ultimate destination, well, my ultimate destination was Coeur d'Alene. So I'm going to put on my Coeur d'Alene resort cap that I bought while I was out there. And that's where we went. I'll tell you about what Coeur d'Alene is. You got to fly into Spokane, Washington, all the way across the country, Rhode Island, Washington. Then you drive about 40 miles east to get to Coeur d'Alene. It's a little resort town at the top of about a 25-mile string of lakes, 3 or 4 miles wide. It's one of the great resorts in the country. And here is the Coeur d'Alene resort from a dinner cruise boat we were on the last evening. Coeur d'Alene means heart of the awl, AWL, the tool you use to poke holes in things. It was given to this, the name Coeur d'Alene, heart of the awl, was given to the Indian tribe that lived in that region because they were experts at hunting and trapping and using awls to poke the holes so that you could sew the skins together. By the French. This is before it was American territory in the late 18th century. So Coeur d'Alene, heart of the awl, and that's what it means. And there's just one of the nation's finest resorts is there right now. One of the cool places at that resort is the golf course, world renowned for 2 things. First of all, I've never seen this one. I've never seen either of these next 2 things I'm going to show you. The driving range at the golf course, a couple miles away, you hit the balls from right here out into the lake. They're floating golf balls. They feel like golf balls, regular balls, but they float, so they're easy to pick up with a scoop or a net, however they do it. It's pretty cool. You hit balls in the water, and that's where you're supposed to hit the balls, in the water. Lord knows hackers like me, golfers like me, do it way too often when you're not supposed to hit the balls in the water. But you're not supposed to hit the ball in the water on this famous hole, the most famous hole in the world. It's the only floating green in the entire world. I guess it's some kind of barge type thing underneath. It floats. You can feel the undulation. You can see over to the right, there's a little dock. You actually have a boat from over here to the right that drives you back and forth to the green. It's a big green, but the day we played, vicious winds. There I am about to tee off, about to hit my first of 2 balls into the water. On this hole, you're not supposed to hit it into the water, but I did. But it was a windy day. The wind was coming in hard from into our face and to the right, and they said it was some of the toughest conditions they'd ever seen. Try to hit a ball onto that green. You can kind of see the uneasiness of the waves, the turbulent waters in the background. So that's Coeur d'Alene. That's a quick preview of my trip to Idaho. Now, why was I in Idaho? Well, what's not well known, and I don't talk about it that much, is I am the state leader of what is called nationally and internationally the center-right meeting. We regularly convene, usually on a monthly basis, sometimes more often, sometimes less often, but usually on a monthly basis. We convene leaders of conservative, free market, libertarian kind of groups, sometimes political groups. And the leaders meet and we share ideas. We share what's going on in your town, what's going on with this policy you're concerned about, that, what can we do together to act. And all of this, you've seen Grover Norquist on this show before. Grover Norquist founded these center-right meetings across the country and in, I think, a dozen or 2 other states now. And he invites the leaders of these center-right meetings, and I'm the state leader, to usually once a year, he has a summit called the Coalition Leaders Summit. We've been to New Orleans, we've been to DC, we've been to Miami. I missed the trips to Alaska and Kentucky in recent years. This particular trip was scheduled for Idaho, Coeur d'Alene. Now, if you're a member of a group, could be a Facebook group, could be a formal 501c3, C4, or any other kind of group, and a business association, a chamber of commerce. If you're a leader of a group and you want to meet other freedom-based leaders in our state, send me an email, info@rifreedom.org, and we'll have a discussion. And it's an invitation-only meeting we have, and we'll talk about our criteria and all that. All right, so back to my flight and the profound thoughts I kind of had just a week ago, it was a week ago today. In fact, a week ago at this very minute, I was standing on that driving range, hitting balls into the water exactly 1 week ago right now. I was hitting it. But as I was on the plane before that last Tuesday, and as I took in the vastness and the beauty of our country, its natural greatness, you know, and I'm reading a book on Lincoln on the plane as well. It also made me think about our historical greatness and the historical adversity we've had. The checkered past that today's leftists want to make so much of, and how I think America should be proud of our heritage, all of our heritage, including some of those checkered items. I think every American should come to properly understand in proper context and ultimately to defend, including how we sought to overcome those checkered periods and those checkered actions, sinful actions, if you want, how we sought to overcome them. And I think every American should properly understand and defend Americans' great and proud heritage. The white supremacist advocates, the white privilege advocates, the critical race theorists want to teach you the exact opposite, that we should be ashamed of our past and that stain persists and can't be washed away even today. In short, as I'm looking out the window at the great American landscape, I felt lucky. And reading that book on Lincoln and considering our countries, I felt lucky to be a citizen of the United States of America, the world's greatest country. It's truly a privilege, and I say that on purpose. It's a privilege to live in this country. This is 180 degrees contrary to the left's narrative of white privilege, which is nothing more than a Marxist attack on our American way of life. American privilege is real, and it's pervasive among the citizenry. American privilege confers tangible benefits and unlimited opportunities upon our nation's citizens and anyone who wants to pursue them. Why else do so many from so many countries seek the privilege to live in America, even if they come here against our own laws? White privilege, on the other hand, is a myth. It's a contrived political construct purposefully designed by limousine socialists to create division in our country. Yes, our nation has had problems. Yes, we have sinned as a nation. I'll talk more about that in the future, but no, we are not a nation construed upon or from the evil of white privilege. Patriotic Americans understand and appreciate the great privilege that we have been granted. And we understand that we have a role to play in keeping America great, similar to how John F. Kennedy asked of Americans almost 50 years ago. With individual-based freedoms, a strong work ethic, a Judeo-Christian spirituality, and a charitable and social welfare generosity among our people, Americans ensure that even the most underprivileged and poor among us can benefit from a standard of living unparalleled throughout the world. This great American privilege extends to the constitutional goal of equality, of justice under the law, educational opportunities, culture and the arts, cutting-edge healthcare, and long lifespan expectancy. At least on paper and in theory. Whether that has been practiced by imperfect humans, by political humans, by sinful humans, whether that theory has been executed properly, we can debate that. but America's founding principles are a privilege. Now today, communist activists, compliant educators, big tech and big business executives, along with pandering politicians, want you to believe that we are a tarnished nation, perpetuating the false narrative that white privilege is America's original sin and a growing cancer in our society, a disease that cannot be eradicated without a massive and total reconstruction of our democracy put under a socialist totalitarian rule. This is a dystopia, not a utopia, where rigging, social equity, and equitable outcomes, not ensuring equality of opportunity and merit, become the primary purpose of government. This is a bastardization of our democracy and our founding principles, and you know it. Don't be fooled, because this is foolishness. Yet I don't understand how, but somehow this woke philosophy derived directly from the Marxist playbook, and it is. Listen to my commentary last week on critical race theory. But this philosophy has overtaken an amazingly high number of our academic, governmental, religious, corporate, and civic institutions. I mean, it's scary in it itself. To flip the narrative, this theory, these theories, gender equity, racial equity theories, it's themselves have become the cancer in our society. And you know it, and they know it, yet they keep trying to pull the wool over our eyes. And it's at the point where grassroots Americans, like some of the ones you're going to meet today on this show, parents, others, grandparents, just concerned, must rise up and defend our great nation. It's brave Americans like Nicole Solas, the South Kingston mom you will meet, who, after making numerous inquiries about the curriculum that was to be taught to her child, was threatened to be taken to court by the corrupt and compromised school committee that itself is committed to this misguided social equity, critical race theory agenda. Nicole became an instant national media phenomenon, and she's become the standard bearer here in Rhode Island for parents who do not want their children to be indoctrinated with anti-American propaganda. And right now, I'm going to show you that you can join in this. I'm going to mention this later in the show, but stop the indoctrination of our students. Just go right to rifreedom.org, right on our homepage, click right at the top, stop the indoctrination, and you can sign a petition that will not only add your name to the list, but will send an email to numerous state education officials saying we do not want our kids to be indoctrinated. So Nicole Solas, as you'll meet, has become the symbol for that resistance against this Marxist ideology. For parents who don't want their children to be indoctrinated. For parents who instead want their children to understand what a great privilege it is to be American. The white privilege advocates hate America. And their argument isn't with whiteness. That's an excuse. Their argument is with America. Their argument is with the American privilege I just talked to you about and our American way of life. The white versus black thing is just an excuse. An excuse where they claim that centuries of white supremacy have created unforgivable and irreconcilable system of white oppression over oppressed minority populations. However, as Abraham Lincoln orated in his second inaugural address, and as I read on that book, that very instant, I was looking out the window at America. I never realized this about his second inaugural address, but it was his fervent belief, and it is mine now, that America's complicity in the sin of slavery was fully paid for equally by both the North for allowing it to happen and the South for carrying it on, that our punishment was the Civil War itself. Lincoln's speech, quote, "Every drop of blood drawn with a lash shall be paid by another drawn with the sword." And that the judgments, quote, "the judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether." It is not for man, especially those with a political agenda, to reap justice on a nation for such sin. This is the realm of God. And the Civil War was the punishment. The blood, the deaths, the carnage, the misery, the destruction. North and South equally. In other words, that was the punishment the Lord, inflicted upon America for its sin. But what it means is the debt has been paid. The sin has been atoned for. It's time to move on. Instead, the left wants to dredge it up over and over and over again, permanently using it as a cudgel against our great American society. So instead of perpetuating the divisive concept of white supremacy, Americans should humbly, and I stress the word humbly, acknowledge that American supremacy has been the greatest force for good in recorded history. Our great American supremacy has resulted in the creation of unprecedented wealth, respect, and admiration as Reagan's shining city on the hill from countries across the globe, and the unrivaled security of being protected by the greatest national defense system ever conceived. A military power that has regularly and historically adhered to King Arthur's noble principle of might for right. I'm invoking some big names here: Lincoln, King Arthur, Reagan, Marx. Message to Barack Obama: American exceptionalism is a fact, and we should be damn proud of it. No other nation was so conceived in liberty. No other nation became the model for democracy across the globe. No other nation has created such prosperity for its citizens. And no other nation has sacrificed so much for the freedom of others. Now is the time to step out, no, leap out of the left's pretend never land of anti-American white supremacy and white privilege, that land of make-believe, and instead let's deal in the reality that any past transgressions we have nobly sought to overcome. Maybe not completely successful yet, but we have nobly sought to overcome them. It is American supremacy that has so positively changed the world, and it is American privilege that allows all of us equally the opportunity to pursue and realize the great American dream. That great American dream is being clouded over in South Kingston by a corrupt school committee under union influence of one of its members who's an executive with the National Education Association, the NEA, one of the largest teachers unions in our state and in the country. Teachers unions, as you will soon hear, I think, from one of our upcoming guests, are one of the forces behind this critical race theory being pushed in our schools. They do not have the students' best interests at mind. We'll talk more about that. But one brave mom has stood up. One brave father, you will also hear from later in the show, has stood up And we must be proud of our great American heritage. We must not be afraid to talk about American supremacy and American privilege. And joining us now is that courageous mom and the man whose website first promoted her story. Welcome to In the Dugout, Nicole Solas and Professor Bill Jacobson. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us on.
Nicole, let's start with you. Before we get any updates on the situation in South Kingston, you've become somewhat of an instant local and national media star. Tell us about some of or sensation. Tell us about some of the interviews you've done in the last week or two.
Sure. So obviously Fox News was the first one. That was an invitation directly from them, unsolicited, and was really the very first one to get my feet wet. After that, it was Tucker Carlson, Dana Loesch, if I'm saying her name right. And then I've had some radio spots with DePietro. I'm obviously here talking to you.
Yeah.
And then later today, I'll be talking to the Daily Signal. I think I missed a few in there, but that's a good overview of what I've been doing to get this message out there.
Did you expect this kind of coverage when you first put in those APA requests a
No,
long time ago?
absolutely not. Again, the school told me to do that, so I never thought that doing what the school told me to do would become such an issue.
We never thought they would turn around and try to sue somebody. Now, on the radio interview you did locally with Tara Granahan that has caused so much controversy, she thought there was some motive, and she apparently bought the union line that you were part of some national racist group that helped vault you to prominence. But Bill Jacobson, it was really your blog of Nicole on your website, Legal Insurrection, was the one that really helped her catapult to national attention, wasn't it?
Right. When I saw what was going on with Nicole, I asked her if she'd be interested in writing about it for Legal Insurrection. And your listeners may or may not know what Legal Insurrection was. Apparently, some prominent personalities in Rhode Island don't know what it is, but we actually have an extremely wide reach. We are extremely influential. I've been on Fox News many times. I've been on other media. Producers watch what we write. Other publications watch what we write. So anybody who's the least bit familiar with the conservative media landscape would know that when we write something, it has the opportunity to be pushed to a national level.
When Legal Insurrection talks, people listen.
People listen, even if you have no idea who we are. And that's okay that people don't know who we are. But so I immediately recognized this as a story that had potential national implications, not just because of everything that's going on in the nation with critical race theory and quote unquote anti-racism training, which is a misnomer, but the issue of a mother requesting information and now the school board's threatening to sue her.
Yeah, that's kind of big news, isn't it?
That's right. I mean, it should be shocking to nobody that caught the attention of national media.
Yeah.
So there's no grand conspiracy here that I'm aware of. We put it out there. We promoted it like we do many of our posts and our stories.
And presto chango, she gets an invite. It's not that hard, right? It's really not that complicated.
It really isn't that hard, but we also promote it on our social media. A lot of people follow our social media. A lot of people in conservative media follow it. And so we try to promote our stories. But this was one that didn't really need much promotion. It really took off on its own.
And as we look at that original story, let me ask Nicole this. It's on your website, and it's been updated since. Nicole, let's just put it to rest. The union, we now know that a paid public relations firm, almost undoubtedly paid for with union money, because one of the school committee and South Kingston board members is a union executive, that there was a paid public relations firm fed talking points to the committee chair to slander you And that one of those talking points is that this whole, your whole set of actions was part of a plan with some national racist organization. Is any of that true?
No, it's nonsense. I would be in my kitchen having my coffee, submitting public records requests while I'm cooking breakfast for my kids, trying to get information from my school. My public records requests were done completely by myself, and there was no national organization, racist or otherwise, that was assisting me in making my own public records request. Anyone can do it, and everyone should do it to hold their governments accountable.
You went in the article that Legal Insurrection published, you were quoted as saying they, as in, I assume you're referring to the school committee, smear people who ask them questions who disagree with them. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think the public meeting that we had was evidence of their retaliation to people who ask them questions about CRT, who ask them questions really about anything that they're doing that they feel threatened by. So I've heard from other parents in town that they have been called racists or oppressors because they are either asking—
Those other parents. Those
yeah,
other parents.
other
Yeah.
parents that are called oppressors of either their own children or other people because they want information about what the school district is doing. So I think what happened to me is really indicative of a larger culture of schools retaliating against parents who are simply advocating for their children. And in some cases, they're just trying to get information. They may not even be advocating for anything in particular.
Yeah, I would argue it's the union influence on that committee, and we'll get to that in a minute. Professor Jacobson, now give us a little bit of your background personally, as I ask you this sort of incorporate into your answer on this sort of legal question. They publicly claim she was part of a national racist organization. They clearly set her up at that meeting, tried to embarrass her, intimidate her. They did not. You're a lawyer. Does any of that have the potential to rise to slander, defamation, or anything like that?
Well, I haven't researched this specifically with regard to this case, and it depends on the state whether calling somebody a racist is a defamatory statement or a matter of opinion. And I haven't examined Rhode Island law on that, but they did make a factual statement that she was working on behalf of an organization. And that's a factual statement. So factual statements can be actionable. Opinions, protected opinion cannot be. But I think there's also a bigger issue here, which I think you and Nicole have just touched on, which is this is the tactic, okay? They try to silence people. It's not just to harm Nicole, it's also to silence other people.
So it's really part of the cancel culture or playbook, right?
And what's particularly outrageous here is that the initial statements that she was associated with some sort of national racist organization did not name the organization, which I think could make a big legal difference here. So you can imagine people hearing this and they are thinking, oh, maybe she's associated with, the Aryan Nation or something like that, because it wasn't named. So it was actually worse that they didn't name a group.
Wow, yeah, by leaving that door open to people's
leaving that door open.
Yeah.
It was only at the public meeting that the chairwoman of the school committee, now ex-chairwoman, identified the group as Parents Defending Education. Now, I'm very familiar with them. Two of their leaders have been on webinars that we have run.
Erica Sanzi is a wonderful advocate for
and
school
Erica
children.
is a local, but Nicole Neely and Azra Nomani, first of all, it shouldn't matter, but they're not even white, quote unquote white, okay? They do great work. You can agree with them or disagree with them, but to call them a national racist organization is really hideous. And it shows how low these people will go to try to smear people and get them to shut up and try to make them toxic. I mean, I believe, awaiting more evidence, but I think it's reasonable based on what we know, that there's something bigger going on here. They didn't just pluck Nicole out of nowhere. okay? They have a bigger agenda to stigmatize and demonize Parents Defending Education, which is a national organization. It's not a national racist organization, but it is national, and they've given support to a lot of people, parents and school children and other people like that. The other part of it is, and I'm now just figuring this out, this may have also been a big distraction from the union mailer issue that is in
Yeah,
South
we're going to get
Kingstown.
into that in a minute. If we have time again, we're going to get into
Okay,
that.
so it's like, let's not focus on the fact that children's names and addresses were leaked to a union, okay? Let's focus on Nicole Solas, bad Nicole Solas, filing all of these public records requests on behalf of, and I think there's a combination of things
you're right.
going on here.
I think you're right. And these are not actions of true public servants. Earlier today, our center renewed its call. We were the first to call for the resignations of Chairwoman Comiskey and committee member Sarah Markey, who is the NEA union executive that's poisoning that board and that school district, in my view. Nicole, was that committee's action befitting of public servants? And do you agree with our call for resignations and that they're stepping down as chairwoman and the vice chair stepping down as well are not sufficient, that resignations need to happen? This is not good public service.
Absolutely. Resignations need to happen. If it were up to me, I would have a completely new slate. Not fitting of public service is an understatement. I think it was an embarrassment of American government, and it reminded me of a totalitarian regime that targets people for exercising their civil rights.
And I know parents throughout South Kingston and Rhode Island and the nation are outraged at this. Bill, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it. I've been told by non-lawyers that there is no provision in South Kingston, the charter, for a recall election of school committee members. We're going to be starting a public pressure campaign soon, along with other coalition members. To Nicole's point of, there really needs to be a whole brand new school committee there, one that isn't pushing a radical agenda. Are there any legal options in that regard that you might be aware of, or are you just not familiar with that area, Bill?
I'm just not familiar. I mean, we normally have not in the past covered much about local Rhode Island politics. And so
you're national focused. Yeah.
Right. Now, Nicole's story is a national story. It just happens to be in a place in Rhode Island, but it's really a national story. So we're not as, we don't get involved in town politics. It's really only this year with the flying of the Black Lives Matter flag controversy in Barrington.
That's going to be our topic tomorrow. Yeah.
Was towards the end of last year that I even began to follow it at all. We are based in Barrington. Legal Insurrection Foundation is a Barrington, Rhode Island corporation. Great. Yeah. I like to say we're the best kept secret, at least we used to be, in Barrington, Rhode Island. But we haven't in the past gotten very involved, but I think maybe we will get more involved to the extent local issues like Nicole's have national implications.
All right, let's stay on the legal sort of track for a minute longer. Nicole, you put in many public information requests, APA requests. Have they been fulfilled in a timely and reasonable manner yet?
Right, good question. So as of now, there are no outstanding public records requests, in that they have given their initial response within the 10-day statutory time period. So
which is just a delaying response though, isn't it?
What do you mean by that?
Well, they haven't actually given you the information. Haven't they just said we're going to need more time or something like that?
Well, so I have 5
or it's going to cost you this much money or something like that, right?
Right. So I have 5 to 7 requests that I've paid over $300 for, and I'm waiting for them to compile them.
Paid for information that should be transparently available.
I totally believe that. Yeah. But regarding the 200 requests, all they have to do is respond to me with either an estimate, or they'll say we don't have responsive documents, or they'll say, okay, here's the documents, and they'll just send it to me. when it comes to that, there are no more requests for them to respond to. The ball is in my court to either purchase the information that they've estimated. So, you know, and I think they have completed their obligation under the statute maybe a few days ago, which is less than 2 weeks since the meeting happened. So I'm not really sure why they were so upset about all this work they have to do, because if I don't purchase more information, their work is basically done.
Yeah, but that in itself is unfair. Professor Jacobson, who is also Attorney Jacobson, I don't know how much you've looked at FOIA laws in your role, or APRA laws in Rhode Island, but that seems to be the new trick by the government insiders, is just to charge citizens outrageous amounts of money for information that should be easily available or openly transparent. Is there, again, you know, does this pass legal muster or ethical muster that they're trying to get away with fulfilling these requests by putting out these outrageous financial demands?
Well, it certainly doesn't pass ethical muster, because the point of the public records laws are to make the information available to the public. I am familiar with these laws. I filed them in numerous localities over the course of my career. I've litigated them both as an attorney and also as a plaintiff. Okay. And so I'm very familiar with the games that get played. I mean, we have a request to SUNY Upstate Medical Center for records that, you know, we're now in court in New York State. Okay. It's June and we've gotten almost nothing from them from a December request. So unfortunately, public records requests and FOIA requests is normally what the federal statutes have very good intentions, but the compliance is very spotty. And if it's a highly charged political area, like Nicole's, you're going to get unreasonable estimates, because they know that nobody's going to pay $9,000, which was one of their estimates to Nicole, for records.
All right, I don't want to lose sight of the real underlying issue at hand here. So again, I want to share this story that was also published on Legal Insurrection. I think the original story, Bill, might have come from a professor from Fox News. But again, this was a story that hit the news in recent days. A North Korean dissident escaped North Korea, says what she's seeing in American academia is worse than what she experienced in communist North Korea. So the underlying issue here is the teaching of this Marxist critical race theory, white supremacy, you know, white privilege nonsense in a totalitarian fashion. Nicole, wasn't this really your original concern, to try to find out what's going on in South Kingston, that compelled you to file those records requests?
Yes, I was seeing that over a year ago, my school was starting to have these, you know, totalitarian things happening in the meetings that they were doing, and none of it was clear. So, you know, they basically responded by the playbook of Marxists, by hiding information, or at least not being forthcoming with it, and putting me through this public harassment. So when I read that story with this woman from North Korea, it confirmed a lot of my fears that I thought that our country, or at least my town, was headed in that direction.
Before I ask Bill a related question, Nicole, just quickly, Patricia Morgan, the representative from the Coventry area, West Warwick area, I should say, was on the radio last week, and she's claiming that a lot of this theory, maybe not by name, is being pushed down from the Rhode Island Department of Education, and the school districts will have little choice but to adopt some of this radical racial theory. Do you have any knowledge or evidence that this is indeed the case?
Well, I just saw, oh, sorry, just for Bill.
I'm sorry, that's not something that I've personally looked into yet. I think these are areas we're going to be looking into. I think we're going to make Rhode Island a bigger focus than we have in the past, because this stuff does not just happen everywhere almost simultaneously by coincidence. And, you know,
yeah, it's originating somewhere, right?
Right.
Nicole, your thoughts. So let me have you, Nicole, talk about. I'm gonna share our screen. So So in addition to our call for resignations today, our center published a online petition that right now, if you're watching this show, tell your friends, tell your family, go to it, rifreedom.org, stop indoctrination. It's right at the top of our website, rifreedom.org as well. In this, Nicole, we cite your group, Rhode Island Parents Against Indoctrination. And generally, we're just saying whether it's gender theory, racial theory, anti-American theory, we don't want to indoctrinate our kids. Nicole, why should parents and other concerned citizens in Rhode Island sign this petition? And by the way, when you sign the petition, it's also going to send an email out to multiple educational and elected leaders in our state. I think they need to hear, don't you agree, that parents are not going to tolerate this?
Yes, and they should sign this petition because public school is not meant to indoctrinate children. It is not meant to tell them what to think. It's meant to tell them how to think. They need to learn how to think critically. The concepts of gender theory and critical race theory are extremely complex. Some parents can't even wrap their heads around it, and it's unfair to introduce these concepts to children before they have the ability to think critically about it and make up their own minds about what they think about it. And so if children are being taught this, especially at a young age in kindergarten, even if it's by introducing the concept in sort of a way that isn't really transparent, I think it's robbing them of an education that should be free from sectarianism.
So final question to you. Here's a headline. Nicole talked about the Daily Signal. We should be doing an interview today. Last week, they published this headline, an article. And I want to talk to you to see what you view, since you take a national view. It is my view that because of Sarah Markey, the union NEA executive on that board, that these thuggish tactics were adopted, maybe even a reason these critical race theories were being pushed in South Kingston by her committee, because we know, and as we put out in a report over a year ago, the nation's largest teachers union have chosen a social equity agenda specifically by motion, by vote, as a higher priority than the education of their kids. I believe these thuggish tactics, I believe this curriculum is being pushed maybe by the Department of Education as well, but certainly by the unions. Have you seen any other evidence of union influence with critical race theory in schools throughout the country?
Absolutely. As we speak, it's day 2 of a 2-day online conference for the National Education Association national group about advancing these concepts. And you're absolutely right. The term critical race theory has become toxic. Okay, so they'll never use that phrase. They'll use catchwords and euphemisms like equity and anti-racism, which, like I've said, is a complete sleight of hand. It's the opposite. So yes, National Education Association, as we speak, has a national online conference to promote this stuff. I have little doubt that American Federation of Teachers also has that. Yes, this is the amount, people would be floored at the amount of money flowing towards pushing this in schools. And it really is David versus Goliath, but it's, you know, the people like Nicole who are the underdogs here, and the Goliaths here, the national unions, the Black Lives Matter, which has $100 million, the book publishers, the people who push Ibram Kendi. There is probably billions of dollars, but certainly hundreds of millions of dollars flowing towards promoting this. That's on one side of the equation. On the other side of the equation, you have a very grassroots movement.
Moms like Nicole.
Moms like Nicole. Yeah. And they are scared to death of moms like Nicole. Okay, so they've got to demonize her and threaten to sue her and use their administrative and governmental powers against her.
Bug tactics, exactly.
And that should tell you something, that, and they are trying to do now what they've done to every grassroots non-liberal, I won't even say conservative, movement that arises. They try to demonize them as astroturf. They try to claim they're part of some grand conspiracy.
When they're actually the ones part of a national conspiracy.
They are the ones who are nationally organized with tens and hundreds of millions of dollars behind them.
And we don't have time to dig into it, but I do want to make the point you mentioned earlier, Professor Jacobson, that it was unions in this state that illicitly obtained the names and addresses of South Kingston students, according to reports, some as young as second grade, and send them political mailers on a union-backed school bond referenda that failed miserably in the state. And I don't know if there will be any criminal investigation there, but it was certainly an unethical union activity in the South Kingston School Committee. So we do want to make that point that the unions are not just involved in theory, they're actually out there mailing. Why they would mail students political mailers, I don't know. Nicole Solas, last word goes to you. Is all of this attempted intimidation by the unions and by the school committee going to work? Are you going to be silenced?
Absolutely not. I'm not going to be silent, and I'm going to keep asking questions, and I want other parents to ask questions as well. Submit those public records requests, because that's the only way they're going to answer you.
Nicole Solas, hero mom in America, Professor Bill Jacobson, hero blogger for the nation on legal insurrection. Thank you for joining me in the dugout today. Best of luck.
Great, thank you.
Yep, good day. Wow, what a story from South Kingston. And as bad as things might look there in that town, and with parents fighting back, Nicole's group, it appears that critical race theory and some of its tenets might even be more firmly entrenched in the town of Westerly School District. So joining us back on In the Dugout once again is Bob Caradillo. Bob, welcome back to In the Dugout.
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me back.
You got a brown cap to wear for me today? You brown grad, you?
I did not put my cap on today. I'm sorry. It's actually in the wash.
All right. So you are, if you may, you are the Nicole Solas of Westerly. You are asking questions publicly. You are getting local media attention. You updated us some months ago on your concerns about this critical race theory and other theories being advanced in Westerly schools, and now you seem to have found some evidence to that effect. Can you tell us what you found?
Well, one of the things is a letter from the superintendent that went out to all the school families in June of last year, post George Floyd, where he mentions Black Lives Matter several times and says outright that Black and brown kids are being marginalized in the district. He talks about things that are definitely going on. He's not assuming anything's going on. He's saying that things are going on in terms of marginalization and the like of our Black and brown students. And he really emboldened a whole group of teachers and community members to their cause, for sure.
All right. So this was an email sent out last summer that you came upon that clearly talks about this superintendent being captivated by this social equity agenda concept. All right, what else do you have?
Second thing was, and you and I have talked about this before, the Westerly Public Schools Anti-Racism Policies and Practices, which is a document written by an English language arts teacher, her own words, her own
with
feelings.
The school district's permission and knowledge, or without?
Without. She purported it to be that of the district, but I have been talking to the superintendent and the school committee about this for months. Nobody has given me any answers until last month when we did an interview with the Westerly Sun, our local paper. The superintendent finally admitted that, in fact, this is a teacher's work. He said that it has been handled, whatever that means, with the teacher, and that it is not a district policy. They do, however, have 400 responses from this thing, and I want to know where the responses are and what they're doing with them.
What do you mean responses? Members of the public or students? What?
Well, to whom the survey went out,
Okay.
on the third page of it, it went to families in Westerly, and I want to know what those respondents said. I want to know what they're using them for right now. There you go.
So did this teacher send this out through his or her own means, or did they use the school district's communications infrastructure to put out this survey?
Oh, she put it out through the school. She used taxpayer property to put
So
this
that
out
should
there.
be public information, and you've asked for that information?
I have asked for that. Yes.
All right, and then we're looking at now, which I don't know if it was specifically for that topic, but here is a copy of your APRA request, your records
Right.
request from late May, from about 6-7 weeks, no, from about 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Right.
What response have you gotten?
I've gotten a response. The first response was, this is so voluminous, it's going to take 620 hours to put this thing together.
And how much money are they trying to charge you?
$9,300, Mike. And and I responded back and said, I'll take it all electronically. Don't make any copies. I want it all electronically. I had to clarify a couple points for them. I got a response from them over email just today. And they said, okay, we'll send it to you electronically, but the charge has not changed. The cost is not going down. So
as we talked about with Nicole and Bill Jacobson from Legal Insurrection, this is the trick they're doing now, is to try to hide behind the app request, is to make these unreasonable charges of citizens. Why isn't this information public right off the bat?
Well, I think because, number one, it could be very damaging to the superintendent and to the school committee and to some teachers. That's number one.
Well, who the hell cares? They're working for us, and what they do should be public information. They can't be. This is the problem. They're trying to sneak this curriculum under the noses of parents and other concerned citizens, and they're trying to hide it. Right? Do you agree? Purposely hide it from the public.
They are, and you know, and what else they do is, I have a Facebook group, a private Facebook group. And somehow the superintendent got a hold of a post that I made and told Channel 12 about it last week. And of course, they can't engage on an intellectual level. So all they can do is try to smear the people who are trying to bring the truth to the fore. So they don't really have any integrity. The superintendent doesn't. And he's just trying to smear me and scare me away. And that's not going to happen.
They're trying to indoctrinate our kids, and like we mentioned during our segment with Nicole, right at the top of rifreedom.org, and anyone who's watching, there's a link right there. Stop the indoctrination of our students. Act now. You can sign this petition. I'm sure, Bob, you will endorse this, where you can sign a petition that will not only add your name to the growing list, but will automatically send an email to multiple elected officials and educational leaders. All right. You also have uncovered, I'm sure it was a learning aid, I'm guessing, about I Want the Ball. What can you tell us about this as our readers look at it?
Well, quickly, out of respect for time, what it is, it's two friends, one black, one white. This is an elementary conflict resolution lesson. Okay, the white kid owns the ball. But he and his person of color friend, they play with it every day. So at the end of one of their playing sessions, they start fighting over the ball. The black kid wants it. The white kid wants it. The white kid owns the ball. The black kid's mother comes out because they live close to the playground, and she makes a decision that we will keep the ball at our house because we live close to the playground. And the white kid, I can't remember, is Fred or Ted, can come over and play with it whenever he wants. Now, this is a class. This is second and third grade, Mike. This is what they do. This is a mother tilting the field, engineering a race-based equitable outcome here. This is what these kids are taught from a young age.
All right, now I got to challenge you a little here, Bob. All right, in all fairness. Yes, the picture shows a white and a black kid. They don't signify which one is black and which was white. So the situation could be reversed, right? It could be the black kid's ball, the white kid's arguing over. But either way, I don't think that's relevant to the story. They're just saying that what's yours is mine, regardless of what your race, color, or creed is, and that if somebody makes a claim against something that belongs to somebody else, then you must have a viable claim to that. So I don't think race really matters here, but you concede that we don't know for sure which one of Fred and Ted is white or black, but that really doesn't matter in this conflict resolution, like you said, that you can make a claim on somebody else's property is the wrong thing that's being taught.
Well, I would, I guess I could stand with you on that, to a point, but Fred is on the left, Ted is on the right. That's just,
All right,
that's
let's just leave it at that. All right, I also want to share this other document you have now. Now, this is the syllabus you uncovered,
right,
for sophomore English class, with a focus on the issue of social justice. And then you scroll down to the third page, where you really see, we'll explore significant theoretical our readers can see the last one. It just seems like this racial inequity, this critical race theory tenets are just everywhere in our school systems, even if not by name. These tenets are everywhere. Do you agree?
Yes, I do. And this is how they get around when people accuse school districts of teaching critical race theory. They say, we don't teach critical race theory. Well, there is no critical race theory 101, as we've talked about before. But what they do is they weave and worm the tenets and pillars of critical race theory.
Yeah, social justice and equity and cultural diversity and inclusiveness. Right. All, those are all the buzzwords, right, for critical race theory.
Absolutely right. And this class in particular is a culmination, really, of what I just showed you from I Want the Ball from 2nd and 3rd grade all the way up to this is where they put it into action here. They teach them how to be good little demonstrators and social justice warriors. Yep. For the cause. And incidentally, I might add, the same teacher who put that anti-racist policy and practice together on our dime teaches this class. This is her class. And how was she punished for doing that? She was rewarded with a position on the curriculum committee, the curriculum that was handed down, as you know, from Angelica Infante Green. This curriculum committee for English language arts is going to be in place for 10 years. And this lady, this teacher doesn't belong anywhere near setting up a curriculum or agreeing on a curriculum for these kids.
So how are you and other parents fighting back? Is there a possibility to recall any of the school board members? Is there a possibility to call for the resignation of this compromised superintendent? Public pressure? Are you fielding candidates to run next election? What are you? I know you have a group, Westerly Parents Against Indoctrination. What is your group doing to fight back?
We are going to get a lot more visible coming up very soon in our community. And I don't want to let the cat out of the bag here. I'll tell you off air, but we've got a lot of stuff going on within the next couple of weeks where you're going to see us front and center in the community. We are talking to people about running for office. We have, I'm still in the middle of this APRA fight, as you know.
Yep.
So there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of good stuff going on, and we are not going away. I can tell you that. We are going to continue to fight this fight because we can't support anything that teaches our kids to hate each other, to hate themselves, and to hate our country. It just can't happen.
We agree. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for staying with it. And I know we'll have you back on for another update. Bob Caradillo, Westerly Parents Against Indoctrination. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, folks. So look, pretty deep show today. They're trying to promote white supremacy, white privilege, when really we should be celebrating and not be ashamed of our great American privilege and the great American supremacy that has made us the crown jewel of the world. That can only continue if brave parents like Nicole Solas and Bob Caradillo and many others out there stand up and fight back. I forget the saying, but evil can only be perpetuated when good people remain silent. These are good people. It is evil, the critical race theory tenets derived from Marxism that are being pushed upon our kids. It is pure evil. It has failed everywhere it's been tried, but they do not stop, and we must not stop. Again, info@rifreedom.org. If you belong to a parent group, you would like to get involved, or any other kind of group, and you would like to join the growing coalition against these Marxist anti-American theories that are being pushed, not just in academia in our schools, but in government, in big business, in our civil society. Info@rifreedom.org if you'd like us to know about your organization. Folks, there is nothing more important. When we can destroy our culture, taxes, everything else, doesn't matter, educational choices, if they successfully destroy our culture, they will destroy America, and nothing else will matter. And don't forget, when they destroy our culture, they want to destroy our belief in the Almighty. We cannot let this happen. Tomorrow, again, we've got a good show tomorrow. We're going to be talking about the Barrington controversy, not just the Black Lives Matter flag, but now there's, this is Pride Month. So now there's the rainbow flag about to be flown, or is being flown, at the Barrington's Veterans Memorial. We'll talk about with some of their leaders tomorrow as well. So for In the Dugout, Mike Stenhouse, we'll see you next game tomorrow. Good day.